Okay, we are back. We're here now with Nicholas Pardi. As you probably have already heard the segment on universal basic income. Nick is with us here today to be able to discuss that, as well as now ranked choice voting. Nick, why did ranked choice voting become one of your top priorities? And why do you think it's so necessary today that we embrace it?
Yeah, so actually, it's funny. Um, like we said earlier about UBI and Matthew, where I learned that. Well, I knew about ranked choice voting, but it became a priority actually when I heard your debate between Scott, the one you hosted, Scott, the
Yeah, Nico House, as well as Stephanie Quilo. Yeah, that was definitely a
yeah,
subject in
and
there.
Stephanie made a good point about how what with ranked choice voting, there's less attack ads, and there's less of the you like there's less of a a, a um, a stark competition. It's
Mm.
more of a let's build a coalition, and hey, one, two, or three, um, you know, and it actually kind of injects positivity into elections, which is crazy because I mean, in 2016, we had like the worst presidential election of us ever. Like everybody hated these two candidates, and and now we're in like these crazy political times. And I think if we had ranked choice voting, I think the mindset of elections where it's, well, I hate this person, but I hate this person even more. And I think this person could win, but I actually like this person, but I don't think they can win, so I can't vote for them. I think is a terrible way to elect representatives. I think we have to um, give people the power to say, hey, these are the like three or four top candidates that I like, and I want to see them move forward in this process. I don't want to see the person with the most money or whatever, I don't want to see the most hated person become the nominee, and that's who I have to vote for. And then also, it also gets rid of the you can't vote how you want mindset of like, if you vote for this person, you're throwing away your vote, and we're going to outcast you from our movement because we believe that you're part of the problem, which
Mm.
I don't think is right. I think every person should vote their conscience and not based on who people tell you to vote for, and I think it's a terrible thing to say to people, and um, yeah, I want people to vote for who they want to vote for and not be attacked for it. I think also the splitting the vote argument is now destroyed with ranked choice voting. Like now you're not going to hear, oh, Andrew Yang is just trying to split the vote between the Democratic primaries, or Tulsi Gabbard isn't trying to do this. That doesn't stick because it's not splitting the vote, because you can have him as your first or second choice and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren as your third and fourth, or whatever. You know what I mean? So the splitting the vote thing, the wasting your vote, the I lose, you lose elections, I think can all be remedied with ranked choice voting. And I think it will change the general mindset of our elections.
Mm. Yeah, I strongly agree with you. I'm a big advocate of ranked choice voting myself. And I think the two things that you mentioned that really resonate with me is first, this idea of injecting positivity into the election process, where if you want to do well, you want to win more people who consider you a second or third option. And how do you do that? It's not by attacking the people who is their first
Right.
option. So it forces people to actually be working together or focus on substantive critiques rather than just having this warfare of saying, okay, every vote lost by this person is helpful to me. It's more you want to just be seen as a better candidate in more people's eyes. And the second thing that you had brought up that really resonated with me is that it's not like you're trying to split a lane. So I know some of my viewers are aware that I was briefly running for Congress. One of the main reasons I backed out was my fear of splitting the lane, in that it's already really, really hard to win an election. It's even more hard when you have multiple people in the same lane as you. And I had said when I had endorsed Hector Osegura during my brief run that the reason why I was backing out is I didn't want to take people's money or time if I didn't think I could win, because the vote would be split between Hector and I don't want to damage Hector's chance of being able to win just because I was on the ballot. But if we had ranked choice voting, if Hector got more support than I did, and all of the people who supported me had him as the second choice, that's no concern for me. They just get realigned to Hector's. And so, in my opinion, that's if we had ranked choice voting, I might still be running, honestly. But because of this fear, as you just said, of fearing that you're splitting the lane and you're making it harder for largely people you agree with to have a chance of winning, is a large fear for a lot of representatives. I'm curious to know why you think the existing plurality voting system does it have any benefits that we should be looking at? Like, why do you think we are not going just to ranked choice voting already? Why do you think it's not so obvious to everyone yet?
I think, I feel like, well, in terms of where I live, my community, I live in a kind of a denser populated area surrounded by rural country.
Mm.
And I just think people are not educated about ranked choice voting. I don't think they, like, the people around me is all I can speak for, essentially. But it's just not, they don't think about it. It's not on their minds. And I think that's why it's not it's not bigger right now, is because people are just not unaware of it. And I think if we can get this message out of this is actually going to help our elections and, turnout, possibly, positive outlook on the elections, I think people will generally buy into that idea because it's a lot more, it's genuinely a lot better than what we have now. And in terms of benefits of our system right now, I don't see much. So I gotta be honest. I really don't. It's archaic to me.
Yeah.
I I I think that especially with the caucuses the caucus, I think that's gotta it's these weird archaic ways of uh, electing people and delegates and whatnot, I think just adds to the confusion and mess of our elections, personally. I think we need to get more organized, as we saw in Iowa.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think there's a couple interesting things you're bringing out there. I think the first one is that awareness point. I think a lot of people in general don't value the necessary democracy reforms as much because it's a
Yeah.
process topic. It's how decisions that will actually then impact their lives can be made. It's not necessarily like healthcare, which you can see directly how it could impact your life, or it's not exactly like policing, where you see how it's going to directly impact your life. It's a process thing. It's like if you get ranked choice voting, it's not necessarily like it impacted your life already. It's just kind of unlocking all those future things that could potentially help your life. So I think
That's a good point.
that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons why I think people don't think about democracy reforms as much, because there's a reason why we have a representative republic. A lot of people don't like thinking about the inner workings of how politics actually works. Um, and so they just want to see like end results and have other people take care of all the stuff for them. So they don't think about like
Right.
how these people who are making decisions are actually incentivized to make decisions. And then the second thing that I thought was interesting in how you brought it up was comparing it to the caucuses, as I'm pretty sure everyone is fully aware of the chaos that occurred in Iowa, but we just had one also occur in Nevada. And I think it's very interesting that more have not embraced ranked choice voting when we already have systems that are kind of similar in a caucus where you have this ability to realign if your first one is not qualified enough in terms of its turnout. But it also largely removes all the barriers that caucusing has of the time commitment that you have to be there when you're potentially needing to work multiple jobs. Or if you're a parent who needs to find childcare because you have to be away for a couple hours, or the person with disabilities who can't feel like they can attend because they have mobility issues or they are too overloaded by stimulus that are happening at the place. Ranked choice voting gives you that same like reflection of how you really think about the candidates without all the physical inconvenience of having to show up to a location to actually caucus. And I agree with your point. You said ranked choice voting would probably help turnout because you don't feel like you're wasting your vote and throwing it away, and you don't feel like you're being inconvenienced by something like a caucus. With that being said, I'm curious to know if you have looked into other styles of voting. There's approval voting, score voting. Do you think there's something unique to ranked choice voting being what we embrace going forward? Is there a reason why you thought that would be the best system to embrace going forward?
Well, so am I am largely unfamiliar with those voting systems. I do know a lot about ranked choice voting, but beyond that, beyond the different ways in which these systems work, I think we also have to look at a practicality standpoint in that we not a lot of people know about ranked choice voting, but the people who do are very passionate about it. And I think because we have that foundation, it's going to be a lot easier to move towards ranked choice voting than, say, approval voting or whatnot, some of these lesser known, maybe voting systems. Uh, man, I was thinking something. You know, I think it's just we have already a movement towards ranked choice voting. I think I saw something the other day, like 20 cities are now adopting, 20 major U.S. cities are adopting ranked choice voting. So I think that muddying up the waters with other voting systems, now that we already have a push towards ranked choice voting, could potentially backfire
Mm.
in terms of confusion because we already, I mean, and I'm not saying screw all the other voting systems because I am definitely willing to learn more about them. But in terms of practicality and getting these things um, put into place, I think we should stick with ranked choice voting.
That
If
make
you,
Yeah, I was gonna say I think that makes sense to me too, Nick. I think this is a classic case of not letting perfect become the enemy of the good. As you had alluded to, there's already struggles to build awareness for democracy reforms in general. Ranked choice voting is 100% of the new voting style systems, the most popular currently. And so, if we want to get something done, we should unite behind that. And if we get that done, okay, we can always keep improving. We can always change it going
right,
forward. But we already have something
yeah,
kind of good in place. So I completely agree with you there. What you kind of alluded to, one of the points I wanted to finish out on is how do you really get this enacted? One of the things regarding voting is that largely it's controlled on a local and state level. What do you think is the approach that people who are more focused on national politics can do to help really build a movement for ranked choice voting when that power really lies in the hands of states and localities to enact?
yeah, that's a good question. Unfortunately, I'm actually not involved in my local community politics mainly because I am a minority in terms of voting
Mm.
and where I lie. So there's not a huge movement out here to get this on the books. But like we said earlier, I mean, why should you like if you're very passionate about something, just run for some sort of local election because all politics is local. Like that whole
Mhm.
saying is generally true. And if you want something done and somebody like I would say trust yourself more than your representatives because
Yeah.
and most people probably agree with that
Yeah.
because I if a potential representative is saying, "Hey, this is the stuff I want to do," that's great, but also they might not do it.
Yeah.
They, I mean, you know, what there's a ton of stuff we can go in terms of democracy reform and why representatives fall into this weird lobbyist uh, landscape. But I think if you want to change something, one, get involved in grassroots movements. If there isn't any, make some, and run for, for local positions. Other than that, I mean, I don't know. Somehow I got involved in Toronto's movement to ranked choice voting just on Twitter by accident. So um, I would say join the national. I'm sure there's national movements towards it as well. So I would say join those as well, and just reach out and talk to people and just get engaged. Tell people, and a big part of it too is educating people. Um, I think, like you said earlier about how it's it's something tangible, but it seems like nothing tangible will come out of it. But like that's the beauty about democracy reform is that we will probably become more efficient. I mean, definitely become more efficient government if we do these types of reforms. And that's what we got to tell people is, hey, if you want healthcare, yeah, we want you to have healthcare too. But we also have a very outdated system of electing representatives to get to decide that. And if we put into place these democracy reforms, now these things become a lot more possible. So that I think education, involvement, engagement, all those beautiful things. Get into those. That's what I would say.
Yeah, no,
Long story short.
I completely agree with you, and it even challenge you in your area, as you said, most people are not engaged or have similar politics. It always has to start somewhere in each of these
Right.
communities, and I strongly agree with you that on that tangibility point, it's kind of like asking yourself what's more valuable, the key to a vault or the contents of the vault, because without the key, you're not unlocking it, and so does it have any value if you can't get to it? No, you have to have the thing that unlocks that value first. And I would say the last thing I would say for people who are more focused on like national politics compared to local politics is you have to start imposing some of your will against the parties. As
Yep.
a national party, you can set requirements on states of how they conduct their elections. So yes, it's not like a mandate across national level or law, but if you want to hold, let's say, a Democratic primary, the national party has certain requirements that you must follow. And so if you advocate to the DNCs, as hard as this will be, because there is a lot of problems with the DNC currently,
Yes.
if you accomplish that, you also can get it done on all the local levels as well. So I think it's like, as you said, it's getting involved. Pick a path and keep advocating it. And don't believe that your voice has no value in your community. Just take a chance and speak up because no one's going to know about these ideas unless we spread the awareness ourselves. With that being said, I want you all to stay tuned. We're going to take a quick break here before we come back with part 3 with Nick, and we're going to talk about decriminalizing and legalizing drugs. So be back soon, Rosebuds.